guys, and welcome to 8th grade science unit 0. So we are about to get started with a whole year of science, and the very first thing that we're going to do is learn and practice some very important skills that are necessary for doing science. That's what this whole unit is going to be about. So before we get started on the unit, I want to introduce to you what we'll be doing at the end of the unit. So what is your final goal when we finish up unit 0 as a class? So what you're going to be doing, what you're working towards at the end of this unit is a final experiment. So you guys will be taking all of the skills and scientific practices that you learn and practice throughout the unit and apply them to completing your very own final experiment. So today I'm going to introduce to you what that experiment is going to look like, so what the expectations are, what standards it's going to be assessing, and I'm going to introduce to you the topics that you have to choose from. So yes, you heard me correctly. I'm going to give you a whole list full of topics, and it's your decision which one you choose. So let's start by looking at what your final experiment at the end of this unit is going to look like, where you get to show everything that you learned, all of the skills and practices that you learned and practiced throughout Unit 0. So if we look here at our document, so the purpose of this experiment is kind of like what I just said. It's to take all of the skills learned and practiced throughout the unit to design an experiment, collect, analyze, and interpret data, all things that we're going to be practicing, and use the data to draw conclusions about your experimental topic. So there's 3 standards that this experiment is going to be testing you on. 3 standards that, again, we are going to be learning and practicing and talking about all throughout this unit. So they're all science practices. We have planning and carrying out investigations, analyzing and interpreting data, and constructing explanations. All very important pieces of the scientific method and things that you're going to learn how to do as we work through Unit 0. So let's quickly look at what the directions for this experiment are. So what are the expectations of what you need to do at the end of this unit? So the first thing, which is what you're going to do today, is you're going to choose an experimental topic. I'm going to briefly go over those topics, and it's going to be completely up to you and your group which topic you decide to investigate. The one that seems the coolest or the most interesting to you is the one that you should choose. Second thing you're going to do is have to ask an experimental question related to the topic. We want to make sure it's testable. That's one of the first skills that we're going to look at, is really how do we ask testable scientific questions. The next thing you're going to do is submit that question for approval. I just want to make sure that your questions are indeed testable and are something that I know are going to lead you to good conclusions in this experiment. The next thing you're going to do is to determine what your independent and dependent variables are in the experiment. This is a huge piece of understanding how to really do science, and something that we're going to spend a lot of time on in this unit is figuring out what's an independent variable, what's a dependent variable, and how do they come into play when carrying out scientific experimentation. You're going to make a hypothesis. You're then going to plan and write your very own experimental procedure. So we didn't do this last year in 7th grade, but this is something that we're going to delve into in Unit 0, is how do I make my own experimental design and write my own procedure when I want to carry out an experiment in order to answer a question, okay? You're going to create a materials list, so you're going to tell me all the things that you need. You're going to get that approved, and once all of that is done, you're ready to actually move on to your final experiment. So you're then going to run your experiment. You're going to collect all of the data that you need. You're going to organize it in a data table. You're then going to do the good stuff, which is graphing, analyzing, looking at that data and finding out when you interpret it, what does it tell you about your question? You're then going to use all of that data analysis to draw a conclusion, and you're going to finish out with the final step of the scientific method, which is communication. Okay, that's where you're going to write a conclusion in a CER format to share the conclusion that you were able to draw. What was the answer to your scientific question? Was your hypothesis correct or incorrect? And that's how you share your scientific discoveries with the world and with me, your teacher. Okay, last thing that we're going to do today is look at what those experimental topics are. Again, I've given you several, and I'm giving you full free range to choose whichever one seems the most interesting to you. Okay, I also haven't given you a question. So as we dive into Unit 1, please think about what questions could we ask about these topics? What kind of investigation could we carry out using these topics? So let's jump into our other document here because it comes with some pictures. I can explain it a little better. Okay, so just going to briefly explain to you what the topics are, and again, the choice is yours which one you decide. Okay, so First topic is sponge capsules. So you may have seen these, you may have not. They're these tiny little plastic capsules with foam inside that when they're put into hot water actually expand, grow larger, and pop out into different shapes. Okay. Another possible topic is the Mentos and soda explosion. I'm sure you've seen this on YouTube. So mixing Mentos candies, the little white mints, with soda, putting it in the bottle, shaking it up, and you can see here the outcome. Okay. Another option. Third potential option, soaking gummy bears. So taking gummy bears and soaking them in different liquids, very broad. Okay. What kind of questions could you ask about that? Okay. Dropping a ball from various heights. Okay. This one's a little bit more straightforward, but maybe that's what you're into. Okay. Taking a ball, dropping it from different heights. What questions could we ask? What data could we collect? What kind of hypotheses could we make about that? Building a catapult. So if you're into engineering, I've made a few in here, which are these next ones, where you're actually, not only are you designing an experiment, but you're also doing a little bit of building, okay? Building a catapult using simple materials like popsicle sticks and rubber bands and using it to launch things. What questions could you ask there? Next, balloon cars. So you may have seen these before. So designing and building model cars that use inflated balloons to actually move. Balloon rockets, very similar to the car, except now we just put it on string and allow it to shoot, okay? And finally, a marshmallow launcher, which is using these simple materials to build something that can actually shoot marshmallows or any other object across the room. And finally, you have the option to choose your own topic. So maybe you have something at home that you've been wondering about. Maybe you saw something cool on YouTube and you'd like to try it. As long as it's testable, you can ask a scientific question about it, make a hypothesis, and collect data to draw a conclusion. You can choose whatever topic interests you if you have the materials available. Okay, so we are going to be learning a lot. Okay, you guys are going to be doing a lot of practice, but I want you to keep this experiment in mind because this is where we are heading. And if you learn all of these skills as we work through the unit, you will be very successful in designing, carrying out, and drawing conclusions about your very own experiment.